The shooter's bullet missed her by inches, but she didn't run. She couldn't, because she'd just remembered that 17 years ago, a grad student named Mia pressed this necklace into her hand and whispered, "Survive," while the Whitmore Institute burned around them. Subject 47 had escaped that night with 7 other children, and now someone was hunting them down one by one, staging accidents and suicides to bury the evidence of decades of illegal experimentation. The Mafia boss who just kidnapped her from a gala? He was Mia's husband, and he was about to declare war on everyone who killed her. The anxiety had hit me in the museum's staff bathroom. 20 minutes of white-knuckled breathing exercises while I stared at my reflection and tried to remember why I'd agreed to attend this fundraiser. 6 months in this curator position. 6 months since I'd rebuilt my life from scattered fragments and a hospital bracelet with someone else's name on it, and I still couldn't face crowds without my chest tightening. The warmth of the ballroom wrapped around me like expensive perfume. Soft lighting glinted off the parquet floors, casting everything in the golden glow that only old money and older art could buy. The space was crowded tonight. Donors in evening wear scattered among high-top tables draped in silk, champagne flutes catching the light from the chandeliers overhead. String quartet music drifted from the corner stage, mixing with practiced laughter and the soft clink of crystal on marble. I made my way past a Rothko lone piece, smoothing down the front of my cream silk dress. My hands were still unsteady, the residual tremor from the attack refusing to fade. The museum director gave me a subtle nod of recognition from across the room. I'd been here 6 months now, in my role as associate curator for the Maritime Collection, long enough that my presence raised no questions. That's what I'd built here, a life where I raised no questions. Harper Sullivan. The events coordinator appeared at my elbow, her black cocktail dress immaculate despite managing 300 guests. She looked me over with the practiced discretion of someone trained never to acknowledge discomfort. The Harbor Commission trustees are asking about the clipper ship exhibition. Shall I introduce you? Not yet, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Just circulating for now. She nodded once and glided away. I pressed my fingertips against the cool stem of my untouched champagne glass, trying to ground myself in something tactile, something real. Around me, Chicago's elite performed their carefully choreographed dance of wealth and influence. I'd spent so many years learning to blend into spaces like this, learning to perform normalcy, but I'd never learned to feel safe in my own skin until it was already too late. My hand drifted unconsciously to my collarbone, fingertips brushing against the necklace that hung there. The teardrop diamond caught the light, throwing tiny rainbows across my palm. I'd woken up wearing it 17 years ago in a county hospital, the only possession that survived whatever happened at the Whitmore Institute. The nurses said I'd clutched it so tightly they'd had to pry my fingers open. I never took it off, but I'd spent 17 years trying not to think about why. What I didn't know was that across the city, someone had been watching me for months, and tonight, they'd finally come to collect what they believed was theirs. I reached for a program from the display table, scanning the donor list for names I should remember. Just the motion of normalcy, just the performance of someone who belonged here. That's when the atmosphere shifted. It wasn't dramatic, not at first. Just a subtle change in the energy of the room, like the air pressure dropping before a storm breaks. The animated conversations at the nearby tables grew quieter. The museum director straightened near the entrance, her professional smile replaced with something sharper, more cautious. Even the string quartet seemed to quiet, though I knew that was impossible. Then the brass doors at the gallery entrance opened. 4 men entered, but only one commanded the space. He was tall, easily 6'3", with dark hair swept back from a face that belonged on classical sculpture. Strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, piercing blue-gray eyes that scanned the room with predatory precision. His black tuxedo fit him with the kind of precision that came from bespoke tailoring and serious money. Every line emphasized broad shoulders and a build that spoke of controlled violence beneath expensive fabric. But it wasn't his appearance that made my breath catch in my throat. It was the way everyone else reacted. The events coordinator moved immediately toward him without being summoned. The museum director touched her pearls, a nervous gesture I'd never seen her make before. Donors stepped aside to create a path through the crowded ballroom, their movements subtle but unmistakable. The three men with him fanned out with military precision. Security. Protection. The kind of presence that said this wasn't a man who attended fundraisers for the art. My pulse kicked up, that familiar tightness returning to my chest. Wrong. Something's wrong. The feeling was instinctive, primal, the same survival instinct that had kept me alive when I couldn't remember my own name. I turned toward the Maritime Gallery exit, already planning my escape route. Just leave. Slip out through the service corridor before... His eyes found me across the ballroom. The world stopped. I watched his gaze drop from my face to my collarbone, to the necklace that suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Watched his expression shift from polite detachment to something I couldn't name. Recognition, rage, grief, all compressed into a single heartbeat. He moved, not rushed, not violent, but with the absolute certainty of a predator who'd just locked onto prey. In 12 strides, my carefully constructed life was about to shatter. And I had no idea that the necklace I wore, the only link to a past I couldn't remember, was about to become evidence in a murder that would drag me into a war I never knew existed. The crowd parted. The coordinator stepped back. One of his security team murmured something into his earpiece, but he didn't acknowledge it. He crossed the ballroom in 12 strides. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stand frozen as he stopped less than a foot away, close enough that I could see the muscle ticking in his jaw, close enough to smell expensive cologne and something darker underneath. Gunpowder, maybe, or just the scent of violence barely contained. His hand shot out. His fingers closed around the platinum chain of my necklace with shocking gentleness, pulling me forward until we stood nearly nose to nose. The diamond pressed against my sternum, the chain tightening against the back of my neck. Up close, his eyes were the color of a winter storm. Cold, merciless, beautiful in their absolute focus. "Where did you get this?" His voice was low, controlled, lethal. Around us, the gala held its collective breath. I tried to speak, but nothing came out. My hands came up automatically, defensive, but I didn't push him away. Couldn't. Something in his face, the raw grief bleeding through the rage, kept me rooted in place. He lifted the necklace slightly, studying the diamond with an intensity that felt like violation. When he spoke again, his voice cracked on the edges. "My wife wore this necklace, this exact piece, the night someone murdered her 6 months ago." His thumb pressed against the diamond, and I realized his hand was shaking. It was never recovered. The police never found it. And here you are. His eyes snapped back to mine, and I saw something break open in them. "Wearing it like it's yours." The ballroom spun. 6 months ago. 6 months. The same time I'd started having the nightmares again. The same time fragments of memories started surfacing like bodies from dark water. "I don't..." My voice came out strangled. "I've had this for 17 years. I woke up wearing it after..." "After what?" He leaned closer, and I could feel 300 pairs of eyes burning into my back. "After you stole it? After you helped them kill her?" "After everyone at the Whitmore Institute died," I whispered. "I was 7 years old. This necklace was the only thing I had when they found me." Something flickered in his expression. Confusion. Calculation. Then his security chief appeared at his shoulder. A man with iron gray hair and eyes like flint. Carter. The name was a warning. Not here. But Carter Blake, because I suddenly knew exactly who he was. Chicago's most dangerous man, the mafia boss whose wife's murder had dominated headlines for months, didn't release the necklace. If you felt the danger in that moment, the collision of two worlds that should never have met, hit subscribe. Because what Carter Blake was about to uncover would expose a conspiracy that went far deeper than his wife's murder. And I was the only one left alive who could help him burn it all down. You're coming with me. Not a request, a statement of absolute fact. Now. I'm not going anywhere with you. His other hand came up, gentle but immovable, cupping the back of my neck. When he spoke again, his voice dropped to something only I could hear. Something that carried the weight of grief and fury and desperate, terrible hope. That necklace belongs to my dead wife, which means you either stole it, or you're connected to the people who killed her, or... His thumb brushed against my racing pulse. You know something about what she was investigating before she died. So, yes, Harper Sullivan, you're coming with me, because I'm going to find out which one it is. He knew my name. The realization hit like ice water. He'd known who I was before he crossed the room. This wasn't a random encounter. This was a trap, and I'd walked right into it. The security chief moved closer, and I realized with crystal clarity that I had two choices: go willingly, or be carried out of this ballroom in front of Chicago's most powerful people. Carter Blake must have seen the calculation in my eyes because his grip on the necklace tightened fractionally. Choose fast, he murmured, because either way, you're leaving with me tonight. I looked past him to the exit, to the guests pretending not to stare, to the museum director whose face had gone carefully blank. No one was going to help me. No one was going to stop him. I'd spent 17 years running from a past I couldn't remember, and now it had found me, wrapped in expensive tailoring and grief-fueled rage, demanding answers I didn't have. I met his storm gray eyes and made the only choice I could. Let go of the necklace, I said quietly. I'll walk out on my own. Something that might have been respect flickered in his expression. His fingers loosened on the chain, and I felt the weight of it settle back against my skin. But when I took my first step toward the exit, he stayed so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. A living cage, ensuring I kept my word. The crowd parted in silence as we crossed the ballroom, and as the brass doors closed behind us, sealing me into whatever came next, I touched the necklace one last time. The last connection to a past I couldn't remember. The first piece of evidence in a murder I was about to be forced to solve. The proof that Mia Rodriguez had known exactly who I was and had died trying to protect me. But what waited for me in Carter Blake's fortress wasn't just interrogation. It was a war room filled with evidence of a conspiracy so dark, so deeply buried, that people with unlimited power had spent decades killing to keep it secret. And when I saw what was on those walls, I would remember everything I'd spent 17 years trying to forget. The SUV's interior smelled like leather and gun oil. I sat in the back seat, Carter Blake across from me, close enough that our knees nearly touched. Knox Fletcher drove with the calm efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. The third man, younger, hawk-faced, rode shotgun, his hand resting casually near his concealed weapon. No one spoke. Chicago's lights blurred past the tinted windows as we headed north, away from the museum, away from any chance of help. I pressed my fingers against the door handle, knowing it was useless. Child locks, probably. And even if I could somehow escape at a red light, where would I run? Carter Blake owned this city in ways the mayor never would. He watched me with those winter storm eyes, his expression unreadable. The rage from the ballroom had cooled into something more dangerous. Calculation. Planning. the look of a man who'd built an empire on knowing exactly when to strike. "The necklace," he said finally. "Take it off." My hand flew to my throat protectively. "No. It's not a request. And I'm not your prisoner." The words came out braver than I felt. Something that might have been amusement flickered in his face. "You walked out of that gala with me voluntarily. But if you want to test whether you're my prisoner, by all means, try the door handle." He leaned back, utterly relaxed. "I'll give you 3 seconds before Knox locks us down, and we do this the hard way." I believed him. Every word. My fingers trembled as I reached behind my neck, working the delicate clasp. The necklace pooled in my palm, the diamond catching the passing streetlights. 17 years. I'd worn it for 17 years, and now I was handing it to the man whose dead wife had owned an identical piece. Carter took it with surprising gentleness, holding it up to examine in the dim light. His jaw tightened, and I saw his throat work as he swallowed hard. "Mia wore hers every day," he said quietly. "Anniversary gift. I had it custom made, platinum setting, conflict-free diamond, inscription inside the band." His thumb found the spot, rubbing over invisible words. "She never took it off. Not once in 3 years." "I don't understand." My voice cracked. "If she never took it off, how do I have one exactly like it?" He looked up at me, and the grief in his eyes was raw enough to hurt. "That's what you're going to help me find out." The SUV turned onto a tree-lined street in Lincoln Park, pulling up to gates that opened automatically. The estate beyond was massive, stone and steel, more fortress than home. Security cameras tracked our approach. Armed men patrolled the perimeter with military precision. Knox parked in an underground garage that could hold 20 vehicles. We took a private elevator that required both a keycard and fingerprint scan. Every detail screamed of a man who'd made enough enemies to require this level of protection. The elevator opened onto a hallway lined with original artwork. Hopper Rothko. A Basquiat that had to be worth millions. But Carter led me past all of it, stopping at a door at the end of the corridor. He hesitated, his hand on the knob, and I realized this room meant something. "No one's been in here since she died," he said. "I'm making an exception for you." The room beyond stole my breath. It was an office, but it had been transformed into something else. A war room dedicated to a single obsession. One entire wall was covered in photographs, documents, maps, all connected by red string and patterns that suggested months of painstaking work. The Whitmore Institute's facade appeared in dozens of images. A stately brick building that could have been a private school or hospital. Satellite photos showed the same location from above, revealing additions and expansions invisible from the street. But it was the other photographs that made my vision narrow. Children's faces, grainy and reproduced from old files. Staff members caught on hidden cameras. And bodies. Skeletal remains being exhumed from wooded areas, marked with evidence flags. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. "Mia was an investigative journalist," Carter said behind me. "One of the best. She spent 2 years building this case, convinced the Whitmore Institute was a front for illegal medical experimentation." He moved to the wall, touching a photograph of a woman with dark eyes and a fierce smile. Mia. Even in death, her beauty was undeniable. She knew she was getting close to something big, and then someone put 3 bullets in her chest in our own driveway. I forced myself to look at the evidence wall, my eyes catching on handwritten notes in elegant script. Mia's handwriting, one note, circled in red marker, made my blood run cold. "Necklace protocol, subject 47 and 7 others. Why?" "Subject 47, I breathed. "That's in her notes. Along with your current name, Harper Sullivan, though Mia seemed to think that wasn't your real identity." He pulled a file from the desk, opening it to reveal a surveillance photo of me leaving my apartment. My stomach dropped. "She'd been watching you for 3 months before she died. Never approached you. Never made contact. Just watched, photographed, documented. He met my eyes. Why would my wife spend 3 months tracking a museum curator who supposedly had nothing to do with her investigation? The answer to that question was about to change everything I thought I knew about myself. And what Carter was about to show me next would prove that the Whitmore Institute hadn't just experimented on children. They'd tried to erase us completely. The room tilted. 3 months. Mia Rodriguez had known exactly who I was, had seen the necklace I wore every day, and had chosen to watch from the shadows rather than approach me directly. The door opened, and a man entered carrying a laptop and what looked like a jeweler's toolkit. He was younger than Carter, maybe 30, with the same dark eyes as the woman in the photographs. The family resemblance was unmistakable. "Diego," Carter said. "This is Harper Sullivan. Harper, Diego Rodriguez, Mia's brother and the best tech specialist in Chicago." Diego's expression was cold as he studied me. "So you're the one wearing my sister's necklace?" Not a question, an accusation. "I don't know how I got it," I said. "I've had it since I was 7 years old." "Convenient." He set up his equipment on Mia's desk with precise movements. "Let me see it." Carter handed over the necklace. Diego positioned it under a digital microscope connected to his laptop, and the diamond's facets filled the screen in crystalline detail. He worked in silence, adjusting magnification, shifting angles, his fingers flying over the keyboard. Then he stopped. "Mierda," he breathed. "Carter, look at this." We crowded around the screen. At 200x magnification, barely visible in the platinum setting where the diamond met the chain, was something that looked like a tiny grain of sand. Diego zoomed closer, and the grain resolved into something unmistakable. A microchip, no larger than a pinhead. Embedded so carefully it was invisible to the naked eye. "She put a data chip in the necklace," Diego said, his voice rough with emotion. "My sister turned jewelry into a storage device." Knox had entered at some point, and now he leaned over Diego's shoulder. "Can you extract it without destroying the necklace?" "Give me 10 minutes." Diego's hands were already moving, selecting tiny tools from his kit with the precision of a surgeon. I watched, unable to look away, as he carefully manipulated the setting. The room held its breath. Finally, with a soft click, he lifted free a chip so small it barely existed. "Got it." He slid it into a custom reader attached to his laptop. Code scrolled across the screen, then stopped. A single line of text appeared. GPS coordinates 41.5933 DG N 87.3464 DG W. "Gary, Indiana," Knox said immediately. "Commercial district near the old steel mills." Diego pulled up a satellite map. The coordinates pointed to a bland commercial building, the kind of anonymous storage facility that dotted every American city. Carter's phone was already out. "I'll have a team ready in 30 minutes. "It's a trap." Knox's voice was flat, certain. "Someone kills Mia for what she knows, and 6 months later, we're supposed to believe they didn't find this? Didn't think to check for hidden data? They're waiting for whoever follows this trail." "I know." Carter's smile was cold and sharp. "That's why we're taking 12 men and enough firepower to start a war." What none of us knew was that the people who killed Mia had been waiting for exactly this moment. They'd let the necklace remain hidden, knowing that eventually, someone would follow the trail. And when we walked into that storage facility, we'd be walking straight into an ambush designed to eliminate everyone who knew the truth about the Whitmore project. I found my voice. "You can't actually be planning to. You're coming with us." Carter cut me off, his tone brooking no argument. "That necklace was meant for you specifically. My wife tracked you for 3 months, embedded coordinates in jewelry you've worn for 17 years, and got killed before she could make contact. Whatever's at those coordinates, you're the key to understanding it. I'm not a key. I'm a museum curator who knows nothing about any of this. You survived the Whitmore Institute massacre when you were 7 years old, Carter interrupted. You woke up wearing a necklace my wife somehow provided. Your current identity is probably fabricated. And Mia's note specifically mentions Subject 47, which I'm betting is you. He moved closer, and I saw the desperate hunger for answers burning behind his controlled exterior. So no, Harper Sullivan, or whatever your real name is, you're not an innocent bystander. You're evidence. You're bait. And you're possibly the only person alive who can unlock what my wife died protecting. The weight of his words settled over me like a shroud. He wasn't wrong. I'd spent 17 years running from a past I couldn't remember, building a life on foundations of deliberate forgetting. And now that past had reached out with a dead woman's hand and dragged me back. If I go with you, I said slowly, and we find whatever's at those coordinates, you let me go. I tell you everything I can remember. I help you understand what Mia was investigating. And then I walk away. Carter studied me for a long moment. Then he shook his head. No deals. You're in this until the end. His voice softened fractionally. But I give you my word. I'm not your enemy, Harper. The people who killed Mia, the people who did whatever was done to you at that institute, they're the enemy. And I'm going to burn them all to the ground. Diego ejected the chip, holding it up to the light. Mia was always 3 steps ahead. If she left this for Subject 47 to find, there's a reason. He looked at me with something that might have been sympathy beneath the grief. My sister saved people. That's what she did, even when it got her killed. If she left you that necklace, she was trying to save you too. Knox checked his watch. Team's ready. We leave in 20. I thought about running, about refusing, about demanding they take me back to my quiet museum curator life where the most dangerous thing I faced was an aggressive donor. But that life had been built on lies and selective amnesia. And somewhere in Gary, Indiana, in an anonymous storage facility, was the truth Mia Rodriguez had died protecting. The truth about who I really was. 20 minutes, I heard myself say. Then we go find out what's waiting for us. Carter's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes acknowledged the choice I'd made. We both knew there was no turning back now. Diego began prepping equipment. Knox made calls coordinating the security team. And I stood in a dead woman's office, surrounded by evidence of her obsession, wearing a necklace that had just revealed its first secret. 17 years of running. And now, finally, I was about to discover what I'd been running from. But what waited in that storage facility would prove to be just the beginning. Because Mia hadn't left one cache of evidence. She'd left 8. 1 for each child she'd saved. And someone had already found 3 of them. The storage facility in Gary looked exactly like Diego's satellite images. A squat concrete building surrounded by chain link fence, security lights casting harsh shadows across empty parking lots. It was 3 a.m., and the entire complex appeared deserted. Which meant absolutely nothing. Carter's team had arrived in 3 vehicles, spreading out with tactical precision. Knox coordinated from the lead SUV, his voice calm in the earpieces we all wore. I sat between Carter and Diego in the back seat, watching armed men move through shadows like ghosts. Unit 2. South entrance is clear. Unit 3 in position. Infrared shows no heat signatures inside the target unit. Knox turned to look at us. Could be shielded. Could be empty. Could be packed with enough C4 to level the block. His expression was grim. Your call, boss. Carter checked his weapon, a movement so practiced it seemed unconscious. We go in. Diego, you're with me and Harper. Knox, perimeter security. Anyone approaches who isn't ours, you know what to do. We moved quickly across the parking lot. The facility's main entrance required a code, but Diego bypassed it in under 30 seconds. The hallway beyond was standard industrial, fluorescent lights, concrete floors, numbered doors stretching in both directions. Unit 47B, Diego said, reading from his phone. Second floor, East Wing. The numbers felt deliberate. Subject 47, Unit 47B. Mia's message couldn't have been clearer if she'd written my name in blood. We climbed stairs in tense silence, Carter and two of his men leading, weapons raised. The second-floor hallway was identical to the first, except for one detail. The security camera at the far end had been spray-painted over. Recently, from the looks of the drips. "Someone's been here," Knox's voice crackled in our ears. "Stay sharp." Unit 47B was at the end of the hall. The lock was commercial grade, but Diego had it open in less than a minute. The door swung inward on well-oiled hinges. The storage unit beyond was small, maybe 10 by 10, and contained exactly one thing: a safe deposit box sitting on a metal shelf. Carter entered first, sweeping the space with his weapon. Clear. His men checked for tripwires, explosives, anything that suggested a trap. Nothing. Diego approached the box carefully, examining it with a jeweler's loupe. "No tampering I can see. Lock's original. Whoever put this here wanted it to stay sealed until the right person opened it." "Can you open it?" I asked. He smiled without humor. "I can open anything." His tools came out again, and he worked with the same focused precision he'd used on the necklace. 3 minutes later, the lock clicked open. Carter looked at me. "Your call. Mia left this for you." My hands trembled as I reached for the box. It was heavier than expected, dense with whatever secrets Mia had hidden inside. I lifted the lid. Medical files. A dozen of them, each marked with a number instead of a name. Subject 23. Subject 31. Subject 47. My file, with a photograph paperclipped to the front. I stared at my 7-year-old face. Same eyes, same bone structure, but the expression was wrong. Empty, haunted, the look of a child who'd seen things no child should survive. "Jesus," Diego breathed, looking over my shoulder. "These are experimentation records." Each file detailed the same horror. Pharmaceutical trials, psychological conditioning protocols, neurological studies conducted on children aged 5 to 12. The redacted names of researchers appeared throughout, along with references to Dr. Monroe and the Whitmore Project. But it was the recordings at the bottom of the box that made my blood run cold. 5 small digital recorders, each labeled with a date. The most recent was from 6 months ago. 6 months. The day Mia died. If you felt that moment land, the horror of children treated as lab experiments by the very system meant to protect them, hit subscribe. Because what we were about to hear on those recordings would name names. Senators, directors, people with enough power to make witnesses disappear. And they were still out there, still hunting. Carter took the first recorder, pressing play. A woman's voice filled the storage unit, professional, warm, unmistakably alive. "My name is Lillian Chen. I was a nurse at the Whitmore Institute from 2003 to 2008. What we did there. Her voice cracked. We told ourselves it was research, progressive treatment for troubled children. But the truth is, we were experimenting on kids no one would miss. Foster children, runaways, kids the system had already failed." The recording continued for 20 minutes. Chen described the conditioning programs, the drugs they tested, the children who didn't survive. She named names: Dr. Philip Monroe, director of the institute; Senator James Whitmore, who secured federal funding through classified DoD budgets; Sister Margaret Frost, who handled discipline and, when necessary, disposal of failed subjects; There were 8 children who escaped the night of the fire, Chen's voice said. The fire that was supposed to destroy all evidence. I don't know how they got out, but I know there was a girl, a grad student volunteer who'd been asking too many questions. Mia something. She was there that night, and then she vanished, and the Institute's records showed she'd never existed. The recording ended. Carter's face had gone white. She was there. Mia was inside that place. I picked up the next recorder with shaking hands. This one was Mia's voice, younger than I'd imagined, vibrating with barely controlled fury. This is my insurance policy. If you're hearing this, I'm already dead. The words hit like a physical blow. The Whitmore Institute was a black site research program that experimented on vulnerable children for over 2 decades. I infiltrated it 18 months before they shut it down, documenting everything, getting close to the children they were destroying. Her voice softened. I managed to save 8 of them the night Monroe ordered the facility burned. 8 children I gave new identities, new chances. I gave each of them a necklace, a gift, a tracking device, and a key to the truth. The necklaces will lead you to the evidence. Find the others. Make them pay. The recording crackled, and I heard her take a shaky breath. To Subject 47, Harper Sullivan, if you're listening to this, I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you better. I'm sorry I couldn't stop them sooner. But you survived. You all survived. And now you have the proof to destroy them. The recording ended, and the storage unit fell into stunned silence. I looked down at the medical files, at my own childhood face staring back at me, and felt 17 years of carefully constructed identity crumble like ash. We need to move these files, Diego started, but we were already out of time. The people who'd killed Mia had been tracking us since we left Chicago, and they were about to make their move. The window exploded inward. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes lighting the small space like lightning. Carter threw himself over me, driving us both to the concrete floor. Diego grabbed the files. Knox's voice screamed in our earpieces. Contact! Multiple shooters! Professional setup! They've been waiting! More windows shattered. Carter's men returned fire, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. I caught a glimpse of the shooters, tactical gear, suppressed weapons, moving with military precision. Not mobsters, not street criminals, professional killers. Go, go, go! Carter hauled me to my feet, Diego right behind us with the files clutched to his chest. We ran for the stairwell as the storage unit filled with smoke and bullets. Knox met us at the ground floor, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. 3 vehicles, at least 12 shooters. They had the whole place locked down. Exit strategy. Carter's voice was ice cold. Completely controlled despite the chaos. East loading dock. I've got Unit 2 bringing vehicles around. We ran through corridors filled with gunfire and shouting, Carter's men laying down covering fire as we evacuated. I stumbled, and Carter's hand locked around my arm, dragging me forward with strength that allowed no argument. The loading dock doors burst open. Our SUVs screeched into position. We piled in, Diego still gripping the medical files like his life depended on it. The vehicle accelerated before the doors were fully closed. Behind us, I saw muzzle flashes, saw one of Carter's men go down, saw the storage facility's windows light up with sustained gunfire. Did we lose anyone? Carter demanded. Knox checked his phone, his expression grim. Martinez took one in the shoulder. He'll make it. Everyone else is mobile. They knew we were coming, Diego said, his voice shaking with adrenaline. They've been watching those coordinates, waiting for someone to follow Mia's trail. I pressed my hand against my mouth, trying not to vomit. Professional hitters, military-grade weapons, a coordinated ambush. They killed Mia for what she knew, Carter said, his voice deadly quiet. And now they know we have it too. The SUV merged onto the highway, leaving Gary and its corpse-filled storage facility behind. But we weren't safe. We'd never be safe again. Because we'd just declared war on people powerful enough to run a decades-long conspiracy involving missing children, illegal experimentation, and political corruption at the highest levels. And they'd already proven they were willing to kill to keep their secrets. What we didn't know was that someone inside Carter's organization had been feeding Monroe information from the beginning, and they'd just sent word that we'd survived. The hunt for the remaining survivors was about to accelerate. I looked at the medical files in Diego's lap, at my own childhood face staring back at me from Subject 47's photo. 17 years of running. And I'd just run straight into the truth I'd been fleeing from. The truth that was going to get us all killed. Knox made 3 calls on the drive back to Chicago, his voice clipped and professional despite the blood still drying on his face. By the time we pulled into Carter's estate, a doctor was waiting in the underground garage to treat Martinez's shoulder wound. I followed Carter and Diego to the war room in silence, my mind replaying the ambush in stuttering fragments. Professional shooters. Coordinated timing. They'd been waiting for us, which meant someone knew about Mia's contingency plan. Diego spread the medical files across Mia's desk, organizing them with shaking hands. 12 children, 12 subjects who'd been processed through the Whitmore Institute's programs. 8 had survived the fire. 4 hadn't made it that far. Their files ended with clinical notes about adverse reactions and discontinued trials. They killed children, I heard myself say. Experimented on them until they died, and documented it like it was lab data. Welcome to what my sister was investigating. Diego's voice was raw. This is what got her killed. Carter stood at the evidence wall, staring at Mia's photograph. She mentioned 8 necklaces. We have 1. Where are the others? The recordings might tell us. I picked up the remaining 3 devices, hands still unsteady from adrenaline. She said the necklaces would lead to the truth. We listened to them in order. The second was another interview. This one with a former maintenance worker who described unmarked graves in the woods behind the institute, children who simply disappeared from the records. The third was a classified memo Diego had to enhance 3 times before we could make out the text, showing Senator James Whitmore authorizing DoD funding for patriotic conditioning research. The 4th recording made me go cold. Mia's voice again, but different this time. Scared. They know. Monroe knows I have evidence. I've been followed for the past 3 days. Professionals, not amateurs. Carter doesn't believe me, but thinks I'm being paranoid. A bitter laugh. I'm not paranoid. I'm running out of time. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. I found the others, the 8 children I saved. Subject 23 is Alfred Webb in Seattle. Subject 31 is Elena Vasquez in Phoenix. 3 are dead. Accidents, they called them, but I know better. That leaves 4, including Subject 47, Harper Sullivan, the one I've been watching for 3 months. She paused, and I heard her breathing shakily. I can't approach her, can't risk leading them to her. But if something happens to me, if Monroe's people get to me first, she needs to know the truth. She needs to know she wasn't crazy. None of them were. The nightmares, the memory gaps, the anxiety. It's all real. It was all done to them. Another pause. I've distributed the necklaces to the survivors I could reach. Each one contains coordinates to evidence caches. Together, they form a complete picture of the Whitmore project. But Harper's necklace is special. Hers has the master coordinates, the location of my full archive. Everything I've collected over 2 years. If the others fall, if Monroe's people find them first, Harper Sullivan is the last line of defense. The recording crackled. I'm sorry, Subject 47. I'm sorry I couldn't save you sooner. I'm sorry I couldn't stop them before they hurt you. But you survived. And now, you have the power to make sure they never hurt anyone else. The recording ended. The room fell into silence. If that moment hit you, hearing Mia's voice from beyond the grave, her apology to children she died trying to save, subscribe. Because you understand what this fight is really about. Not revenge. Justice. For kids no one protected. For a woman who gave everything to expose the truth. And for survivors who've been running their entire lives. Master coordinates, Diego said finally. Your necklace doesn't just have one location. It has all of them. He pulled the microchip from his equipment, connecting it to his laptop with new urgency. Code scrolled across the screen, faster this time, and I realized he was using decryption software. There. He pointed to lines of text appearing in rapid succession. 7 more coordinate sets, 7 more evidence caches. Carter leaned over his shoulder. 3 of them matched the dead survivors Mia mentioned. If Monroe's people found those survivors, they have those caches. Which leaves 4. Knox had entered at some point, his cut now stitched and bandaged. 4 survivors who might not know they're being hunted. 4 evidence caches Monroe's people haven't found yet. We find them first, Carter said. No hesitation. No doubt. Alfred Webb in Seattle. Elena Vasquez in Phoenix. The other 2 survivors. Lutia Chen in Boston, Diego read from the screen. And Agnes Morrison in Atlanta. We split up. Knox pulled out his phone, already coordinating. Cover more ground. Get to them before... No. I surprised myself with the force of the word. 3 men turned to look at me. You can't split up. Those shooters in Gary had our position locked down before we even arrived. They knew exactly where we'd be and when. I met Carter's eyes. Someone in your organization is feeding them information. The silence was deadly. Careful, Knox said softly. That's a serious accusation. It's the only explanation. I stood my ground, even as my heart hammered against my ribs. How else would they know about the coordinates? The only people who knew we were going to Gary were in this room. And my security team, Carter said slowly. 12 men who've been with me for years. Men I trust with my life. One of Mia's interviews mentioned how deep the corruption goes. DOD budgets, political protection, Senator Whitmore. I gestured to the evidence wall. You think people operating at that level don't have the resources to buy off a security guard? Plant someone in your organization? Diego's expression had gone cold. She's right. We were set up, which means we can't trust anyone outside this room. Carter pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Knox, I want background checks on every man who is in Gary. Financial records, communications, everything. If someone's been compromised, I want to know. On it. Knox left, already making calls. But finding the mole would take time we didn't have, because at that very moment, Monroe's people were moving on the 4 remaining survivors, and we were about to start a race against a ticking clock. I looked at the coordinates on Diego's screen, at the names of people I didn't remember but somehow knew I'd once called friends. Alfred, Elena, Lutia, Agnes. 4 other survivors of the Whitmore Institute's atrocities. 4 other people carrying necklaces that made them targets. We have to warn them, I said. Before Monroe's people find them. We do more than warn them. Carter's voice carried the cold certainty of someone who'd built an empire on calculated violence. We bring them here, get them somewhere I can protect them, and we use their evidence to build a case that will destroy everyone involved in the Whitmore project. Diego looked up from his laptop. Mia's last recording mentioned a full archive, master files. If Harper's coordinates lead to that, they will. I didn't know how I knew, but I was certain. Mia left me the master key. Everything else is pieces. My necklace leads to the complete picture. Then that's where we'll end. Carter came to stand in front of me, and for the first time since the gala, his expression wasn't hostile. But first, we find the others. We gather every piece of evidence my wife died collecting. And then we burn the Whitmore project to the ground. He extended his hand. I looked at it, at the man who'd kidnapped me from a museum gala less than 12 hours ago, at the dangerous alliance we'd somehow formed in the shadow of his dead wife's investigation. 17 years of running. And now, finally, I was going to stop. I took his hand. Find them, I said. Save them. Make them pay. Diego pulled up flight schedules. Knox returned with preliminary security reports. And I stood in Mia Rodriguez's war room, surrounded by evidence of her obsession, and felt the weight of 8 children's survival settle onto my shoulders. Subject 47. Harper Sullivan. Whatever my real name was, whoever I'd been before the Whitmore Institute stole my childhood and replaced it with nightmares, that person was about to fight back. And God help anyone who stood in our way. The hunt for the survivors was about to begin. 4 cities. 4 people who had no idea their lives were in danger. 4 chances to gather enough evidence to destroy a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government. And 1 traitor who was already telling Monroe exactly where we'd strike next. Carter disappeared for an hour, while Diego and I went through the medical files in excruciating detail. Each page was a catalog of horrors, drug dosages that should have been lethal, psychological stress tests designed to break children's minds, neurological scans tracking how trauma reshaped developing brains. Subject 23, Alfred Webb, had been in the program for 3 years. Age 7 to 10. The notes described him as resistant to standard conditioning protocols and requiring enhanced intervention. I didn't want to know what enhanced intervention meant. Subject 31, Elena Vasquez, had been younger. 5 years old when they brought her in. Her file was thinner, ended abruptly with a note that said, transferred to alternative program location. I wondered if that meant she'd been moved, or if it was a euphemism for something worse. The files for the 3 dead survivors made me physically ill. Their accidents had been orchestrated with clinical precision. Car crashes, drug overdoses, a suicide that the medical examiner's notes clearly indicated was anything but. They've been hunting the survivors for years, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, picking them off one by one. Diego nodded, his expression grim. Mia figured it out about 8 months ago. That's when she started the necklace protocol, trying to reach the survivors before Monroe's people did. His hands clenched into fists. She was racing against a clock she knew was running out. And she lost. She bought you time. He met my eyes, and I saw Mia's fierce determination reflected in her brother's face. She died protecting this information, making sure at least one of you would survive long enough to use it. But time was something we were quickly running out of. Because while we studied those files, Marco Rossi was telling his handlers everything. Our plan, our timeline, and exactly which survivors we'd target first. The door opened, and Carter returned with Knox. They'd changed into tactical gear. Black cargo pants, fitted shirts, weapons visible. Knox carried a duffel bag that he dropped on the desk with a heavy thud. Background checks came back, Carter said without preamble. Found our leak. My stomach dropped. Who? Marco Rossi. Been with me for 4 years. Good soldier, never gave me reason to doubt him. Carter's expression was carved from ice. Until 3 months ago when his mother's nursing home bills suddenly got paid off. $150,000, deposited in his sister's account in 2 installments. 3 months ago, I repeated. Right when Mia was ramping up her investigation. Monroe's people got to him early, Knox added. Probably offered him a choice. Take the money and feed them information, or watch his mother lose her care facility. His voice carried no sympathy. He made his choice. Where is he now? Diego asked. Carter's smile was cold. Somewhere he can't warn anyone we're coming. Knox is handling the interrogation. We'll know exactly how much he told them and who his contact was. I should have felt horror at the casual violence implied in those words. But all I felt was a grim satisfaction that the person who'd almost gotten us killed in Gary would face consequences. So, what's the plan? I asked. Carter pulled up a map on Diego's laptop, marking 4 cities with red pins. We move fast and we move smart. Commercial flights are too exposed. Monroe's people could have eyes at every major airport. So we use my plane, fly to each location, extract the survivors, and bring them back here. All 4 in one trip? Knox frowned. That's a lot of exposure time. We don't have a choice. The second we contact even one of them, Monroe will know we're on the move. We have to grab all 4 before he can react. Carter looked at me. You're coming. These people don't know me from Adam, but they might remember you. You're the familiar face that makes them trust us enough to run. I don't remember them, I protested. I was 7 years old. They'll remember you. Diego pulled up a photograph from one of the files. 8 children standing in front of the Whitmore Institute. I was in the front row, a tiny girl with haunted eyes, holding hands with another child. This was taken 2 weeks before the fire. Mia found it in one of the Institute's archived files. You were Subject 47. They were your family. I stared at the photo, trying to find any flicker of recognition. The faces were familiar in the way that dreams are familiar, present but unreachable, hovering just beyond conscious memory. We leave in 3 hours, Carter said. Seattle first, Alfred Webb, then Phoenix for Elena Vasquez, Boston for Lutia Chen, Atlanta last for Agnes Morrison. He started loading weapons from Knox's duffel into a tactical bag. Diego, you're running communications and tech support from here. I need you monitoring police bands, news feeds, anything that might indicate Monroe's people are moving. What about the evidence we already have? I asked. If something happens to us... Already handled. Diego gestured to his laptop. I've encrypted copies of everything and distributed them to secure servers in 3 countries. If we go dark, the files automatically release to every major news organization and law enforcement agency in the country. He met Carter's eyes. Just like Mia would have wanted. Knox zipped up the duffel and hefted it onto his shoulder. I'll have the plane ready. Full fuel, flight plan filed for Seattle with alternative routing if we need to divert. He paused at the door. You know this is going to get bloody, right? Monroe's not going to let us waltz in and take his loose ends. I'm counting on it. Carter's voice was soft and deadly. The man had my wife murdered. I owe him blood. The next 3 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Diego outfitted me with a concealed communication device and a GPS tracker, just in case. Knox gave me a crash course in basic firearms safety, pressing a compact pistol into my hands despite my protests. You don't have to shoot anyone, he said calmly. But if someone's shooting at you, you need options beyond running and screaming. Carter spent the time in Mia's office, standing in front of her photograph. I found him there 20 minutes before we were supposed to leave, his hand pressed against the glass that protected her image. She knew, he said without turning around. 3 days before she died, she told me she'd found something huge, something that went all the way to the top. I thought she was being paranoid. His voice cracked. I told her to take a break, that she was seeing conspiracies where there were just coincidences. You couldn't have known. I should have listened. He finally turned to face me, and the raw grief in his expression was devastating. She was an investigative journalist. Finding the truth was what she did. And I dismissed her because I was too focused on keeping her safe to realize the danger was already inside our gates. Marco Rossi, I said quietly. Among others, probably. Monroe's people are smart. They would have had multiple sources, multiple ways to track her movements. He touched the necklace in his pocket, the one I'd worn for 17 years, the one Mia had created as a lifeline for children she'd saved. But she was smarter. She built a failsafe that even I didn't know about, one that would activate whether she lived or died. The necklaces. The necklaces. He pulled mine out, letting the diamond catch the light. You're going to wear this again when we land in Seattle. Alfred Webb needs to see it, needs to recognize it as proof that we're telling the truth. I took it from him, feeling the familiar weight settle into my palm. And if he doesn't remember? If none of them do? Then we convince them the hard way. With evidence, with Mia's recordings, with whatever it takes. His expression hardened. Because in about 6 hours, Monroe is going to realize we're making our move. And when he does, every survivor on that list becomes a target for immediate elimination. Knox appeared in the doorway. Plane's ready. We need to move. The drive to the private airfield was tense and silent. Carter's remaining security team, vetted personally by Knox after Marco Rossi's betrayal, followed in 2 additional vehicles. We pulled directly onto the tarmac, where a sleek Gulfstream waited with engines already running. I'd never been on a private plane before. The interior was all leather and polished wood, configured more like a mobile office than an aircraft. Diego had set up a communication station that would let him monitor our progress in real time. "Test your comms," he said, handing me an earpiece. I fitted it in place. "Can you hear me?" "Crystal clear." His voice came through with barely any static. "I've got GPS tracking on all 3 of you. If anything goes wrong, I can coordinate emergency response." "Let's hope it doesn't come to that," Knox muttered, settling into the pilot's seat. Carter took the co-pilot position, leaving me alone in the main cabin. As the plane taxied toward the runway, I looked out the window at Chicago disappearing beneath us and wondered if I'd ever see it again. What I couldn't know was that at that exact moment, Sister Margaret Frost was boarding her own flight to Seattle. She'd been hunting Mia's survivors for 5 years, and she wasn't going to let Carter Blake take what belonged to the Whitmore Project. The flight to Seattle took just under 4 hours. Diego's voice periodically updated us on news feeds and potential threats, but so far, everything remained quiet. Too quiet, in my opinion. "Monroe doesn't know we've moved yet," Carter said, reading my expression. "He thinks we're still processing the Gary evidence, trying to figure out our next move." His smile was grim. "By the time he realizes we're already in play, we'll have at least 2 survivors secured." We landed at a private airfield south of Seattle. A rental car was waiting. Black SUV, completely anonymous. Knox drove while Carter navigated using coordinates Diego had pulled from Alfred Webb's digital footprint. Alfred lived in a modest apartment in Capitol Hill, working as a software engineer for a tech startup. According to Diego's research, he lived alone, had few close friends, and displayed all the signs of someone actively trying to disappear into normalcy. Just like I had. "How do we approach him?" I asked as we parked across the street from his building. "Direct and honest." Carter checked his weapon one last time. "We tell him the truth, that Mia Rodriguez died trying to protect him, that Monroe's people are hunting survivors, and that he has about 12 hours before they realize we're collecting everyone and come to kill him. That's going to terrify him." "Good. Terrified people run. We need him running toward us, not away." We took the stairs to the 3rd floor. Alfred's apartment was at the end of the hall, marked with a simple brass number plate. Carter knocked, 3 sharp raps that echoed in the quiet corridor. Footsteps, a pause, then a voice, wary. "Who is it?" "Alfred Webb." Carter kept his voice calm and professional. "My name is Carter Blake. I need to talk to you about the Whitmore Institute." The silence that followed was absolute. Then, slowly, the door cracked open, still secured by a chain lock. A man's face appeared in the gap, 30s, with dark hair and eyes that held the same haunted quality I saw in my own mirror every morning. "I don't know what you're talking about." But his voice shook, betraying the lie. "Subject 23, I said quietly, stepping into his line of sight. "That was your designation. You were 7 years old when they brought you in. They kept you for 3 years before Mia Rodriguez helped you escape the night of the fire." His eyes locked onto me, and I saw recognition flicker. Not of my face. I'd changed too much in 17 years, but of something else. "You're wearing it," he whispered. "The necklace." She said someone would come wearing the necklace. I touched the diamond at my throat. "Mia gave you one too, didn't she?" His hand went to his own throat, where I could just make out the edge of a platinum chain beneath his shirt. "She told me to keep it safe, that someday it would save my life." His voice cracked. "She said if anyone came asking about it, I should trust them." "Mia was killed 6 months ago," Carter said gently. "The people who killed her are the same people who ran the Whitmore Institute. They're hunting survivors, eliminating anyone who might have evidence or memory of what was done to you." Alfred's face went white. 3 others are already dead. Accidents, they said. But I knew. I always knew it wasn't. He stopped, seemed to make a decision, and unhooked the chain. "Come in. Quickly." His apartment was sparse, organized, the home of someone who lived ready to run at a moment's notice. A go-bag sat by the door. Multiple laptops covered a desk in the corner, all displaying code and encrypted messaging apps. "You've been preparing," Knox observed, "since the 3rd one died." Alfred moved to his desk, pulling up a file that showed newspaper clippings and obituaries. Lena Cortez, car accident. David Park, drug overdose. Sarah Mitchell, suicide. His hands clenched. But none of them would have done that. We were survivors. We knew how to stay alive. "That's why we're here," I said. "To make sure you stay that way." He looked at me then, really looked, and something in his expression shifted. "You were the littlest one, subject 47. You held my hand the night of the fire while we ran." The memory hit like lightning. Small hand gripping mine, smoke filling my lungs, someone screaming behind us, a girl with dark eyes pulling us forward through chaos and flames. "I remember," I breathed. "I remember running." "She saved us." Alfred's voice was thick with emotion. "Mia. She wasn't supposed to be there that night, but she came back. She triggered the fire alarms, broke the locks, got us out." He pulled his own necklace from beneath his shirt, identical to mine. "She gave us these and told us to run and never look back. Said she'd find us when it was safe." "She tried," Carter said quietly. "She spent the last 2 years of her life trying to find all of you, trying to build a case that would destroy the people who hurt you. And they killed her for it." Alfred sat down heavily. "What do you need from me?" "Your necklace has coordinates embedded in it, evidence that Mia hid for you to find." Carter pulled out a tablet showing him the same screen Diego had shown me. "We need that evidence, and we need you to come with us while we collect the other survivors. It's the only way to keep you all safe." "Where are we going?" "Chicago, my estate. Fully secured, vetted security team. Everything you need to stay alive while we build the case to destroy the Whitmore project." Alfred looked at me. "You trust him?" I thought about the past 24 hours. The gala confrontation, the war room revelation, the ambush in Gary, the alliance forged in grief and fury. He loved Mia. She died trying to expose this conspiracy. He's going to burn them all down, and I'm going to help him do it. That seemed to decide him. "Give me 5 minutes to pack." He was ready in 3. As we moved toward the door, I noticed he was carrying the same kind of go bag I'd seen by the entrance, except his was already fully loaded. "How long have you been ready to run?" I asked. 17 years, he said simply. Every single day since the fire. But Alfred's 17 years of preparation were about to be tested, because Monroe's hit squad had already positioned themselves around his building, and we had exactly 90 seconds before they moved in. We were halfway across the parking lot when Diego's voice crackled in our earpieces. "Carter, we have a problem. Multiple vehicle convoy just diverted toward Alfred's location. ETA 3 minutes. "How many?" "6 vehicles. Professional formation. This is a hit squad." Knox was already moving, shoving Alfred toward our SUV. "Get in, now!" We piled in, Knox throwing the vehicle into reverse before the doors were fully closed. Through the rear window, I saw the first of the black vans screech into the parking lot. "They found him fast," Carter said, his voice deadly calm. "Marco must have given them more than just the Gary location. Or they've been watching all the survivors," I said, waiting for someone to make contact. The chase through Seattle's streets was terrifying. Knox drove with precision that came from years of experience, taking corners that should have flipped the SUV, weaving through traffic that scattered in our wake. Behind us, the convoy kept pace. "They're not trying to disable us," Knox observed. "They're hurting us." "Into a kill box," Carter finished. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "Diego, we need extraction. I'm sending you our location." "On it. There's a warehouse district 2 miles north. Abandoned. Gives you room to maneuver." "Or room to get boxed in and killed," Alfred muttered from the back seat. "Trust me," Knox said, yanking the wheel hard left. "I've gotten out of worse." The warehouse district was exactly as advertised. Empty industrial buildings, broken windows, streets dotted with potholes and weeds. Knox pulled into the largest warehouse, a cavernous space that had once housed some kind of manufacturing operation. We bailed out, weapons drawn. The convoy's engines echoed off the concrete walls as they pulled into formation, blocking the exits. 12 men, Carter counted. Professional gear. "They're not here to talk." Alfred had gone pale but held the pistol Knox had thrust into his hands with reasonable competence. "I haven't shot anyone in 17 years. "Today might be the day that changes," Knox said grimly. The standoff lasted exactly 3 seconds before someone on their side lost patience and opened fire. What followed was chaos. Muzzle flashes in the dimness, ricochets screaming off metal surfaces, the acrid smell of gunpowder and fear. Carter and Knox moved like a single unit, laying down covering fire while forcing the attackers to scatter. I pulled Alfred behind a concrete pillar, my own weapon raised but my hands shaking too badly to trust my aim. "They're pushing toward the east exit," Knox called out, "trying to flank us." "Let them," Carter replied. "Diego, you ready?" "In position." I didn't understand until I heard the sound. Helicopter rotors getting closer. Through the broken skylight, I saw it descend, a sleek black bird with no markings. "Our ride," Carter said, firing 3 more shots that dropped one of the attackers. "Move." We ran for the center of the warehouse floor as the helicopter descended, its side door open, and a familiar face visible. One of Carter's security team, reaching down to pull us up. Knox went first, providing covering fire as the rest of us scrambled aboard. I shoved Alfred ahead of me, then felt Carter's hand lock around my arm, hauling me into the helicopter with strength that probably bruised. The aircraft lifted off as bullets pinged off its armored hull. Below, I saw the remaining attackers scatter, their formation broken, their target escaped. "Everyone intact?" Carter demanded, checking us over for injuries. Alfred was breathing hard but nodded. Knox had taken a graze across his shoulder that barely seemed to slow him down. I was shaking but unharmed. "That's one," I said. 3 more to go. Carter pulled out his phone, already coordinating with Diego. Phoenix next. Elena Vasquez. We need to move before Monroe realizes we got away with Alfred. But Monroe already knew, and he was about to make a decision that would change everything. Call in Sister Margaret Frost, the woman who'd terminated more survivors than anyone else. The woman who'd been hunting us since the beginning, and she was already in Seattle, watching our helicopter disappear into the clouds. As the helicopter banked toward our waiting plane, I looked at Alfred. He was staring at his necklace, the twin to mine, his expression a mixture of grief and determination. "Mia really is dead?" he asked quietly. "Yes." "Then we finish what she started." His hands steadied on the weapon Knox had given him. "All of us. We burn them down." I nodded, feeling the weight of Mia's necklace against my throat. 4 survivors. 4 chances to gather the evidence that would destroy the Whitmore Project. 4 opportunities for Monroe's people to kill us all. The war had just begun, and we were nowhere near ready for what was coming. Phoenix was next. Elena Vasquez, Subject 31. A lawyer who specialized in child advocacy cases, fighting for the very kids the system had failed. She'd built her entire life around protecting others from what had been done to her. But in 3 hours, Monroe's people would find her office. And this time, they weren't sending a hit squad. They were sending someone who knew exactly how Elena thought, how she'd run, where she'd hide. They were sending the woman who'd tortured her 17 years ago. Sister Margaret Frost was coming, and she never left survivors behind.